"2020 has been quite a year for gaming. Despite the ways that COVID-19 has impacted how we live on a daily level, one thing is for certain: people love playing video games. Within the first month of the pandemic, video gaming was up 75%. Video game streaming was up 12%. So why does this matter? What does this have to do with Ghost of Tsushima? Also, Nick, you realize 2020 is over, right? Yes, I do, but in order to fully understand why Ghost of Tsushima is, in my opinion, the game of the year for 2020, it is important to understand the context in which it came out. So, in July, a few months into the pandemic, Sucker Punch Productions released a PlayStation-exclusive open-world game called Ghost of Tsushima. In case you haven't played it yet and have no idea what a Tsushima is, it's a small island off the coast of Japan. Their timing of their release was perfect. If there was ever a time to release a huge open-world game for people to sink their teeth into, now was the time. People were dying to dive in and get lost in a new, foreign world to escape the craziness of life in a pandemic and enjoy exploring rich green countrysides, dark forests, and beautiful, expansive fields. To adventure around a sprawling map, to find collectibles, run into fearsome enemies, and engage in intense combat. And Sucker Punch delivered. So you may be thinking, so clearly this is the greatest game of the year, right? Hands down? Well, not quite. Like I said before, 2020 has been quite a year for gaming. The Last of Us Part 2 came out alongside Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Animal Crossing, Cyberpunk 2077, just to name a few, all heavy hitters. The Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. So why didn't Ghost win? Well, some of the controversy arises when you look at the reviews for Ghost of Tsushima. Despite having a 9.2 on Metacritic amongst consumers with more than 18,000 reviews at the time of recording this video, the Metacritic score is still sitting at an 83, which isn't bad by any means, but why the discrepancy? What did Ghost get wrong, if anything? Why didn't it win Game of the Year? Now, obviously no game is perfect, including this one, but let's take a closer look. We're going to look at the essential ingredients of any good open world game: the story, the combat, the map, side quests, and extra features. The first thing open world games tend to get wrong is the story. Most of the time, there is a complete lack of a compelling story. To be fair, it is an interesting balance to get right. The game's story needs to be engaging enough to keep a player coming back, but not too demanding to the point it doesn't feel like you have enough freedom to explore the open world and not feel too tied down to any one quest. Now, even though this game is an open world, it rarely fell into these pitfalls, as it struck a balance gracefully weaving in story moments into an open world and its characters. Missions that could have easily been fetch quests or follow the target missions were rich with unique combat and moments of character growth. The main story of Ghost of Tsushima was emotionally resonant as we saw the arc of Jin Sakai abandon the samurai code that he was raised to follow for the less honorable, albeit highly effective, methods of the Ghost. His relationship with his uncle develops real connections and story beats that are genuinely emotionally effective. The game's final chapter is a satisfying culmination of the story, and I have to commend the incredible vocal talent of the entire cast, specifically Daisuke Tsuji for his portrayal in both voice and likeness of Jin Sakai. Also, my apologies to Daisuke if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I gave it my best shot. Their acting is often what sells each cutscene, and for a group of Americans in Washington to make such a true-to-form game rooted in Japanese culture and beloved by both its American fans and respected by its Japanese fans for its authenticity, Sucker Punch clearly did their homework. For me, the most surprisingly effective part of the story wasn't even one of the main story beats. It was Jin's relationship with his horse. So there's some spoilers ahead, but you've had enough time to play this game, so go out and play it already or just skip forward. Each player, towards the beginning of the game, gets to choose his horse. So I chose a beautiful, glistening white steed named Nobu, which means trust. And after the first 20 or so hours, Nobu and I were best buds. Every time Jin would get on and say, "You're a good horse, Nobu," I felt like I was right there with him, patting him on the shoulder as we rode. In the third act of the game, while escaping capture, Jin rides Nobu away to safety, but not before Nobu was hit with multiple arrows. And like a good horse and a loyal friend, Nobu carried Jin all the way to safety before he collapsed from exhaustion and dies. And I'm gonna be real with you, that part out of the entire game made me cry. There are other points that were sad as well, and I don't even like horses that much, but man, that got me. Rest in peace, Nobu. Anyway, the fact that a game can make you care so much for an NPC horse, they're doing something right. At first, this was the most divisive part of the game for me. My bread and butter are first-person shooters, so to play the closest thing to a third-person hack and slash that I've ever played was a bit uncomfortable at first. But Ghost's combat system is easily understandable, and after even just a short time, I was able to competently fight off multiple enemies of different types and actually win. Yet it wasn't so easy that it didn't feel rewarding. I felt like there was always something new to play with. The game consistently gives you more options for fighting enemies or taking over bases, and by the time I had a good grasp on a new mechanic, stance, or weapon, I was given the next new challenge or enemy. I genuinely enjoyed learning the nuances of each fighting stance and using it against the correct opponent. And when you land those perfectly timed parries, it's just such a good feeling. So after a steep learning curve for myself, I couldn't wait to get into another fight. The combat system is also filled with plenty to explore depending on your playstyle. There was something so satisfying about donning the full samurai armor and just running into a base to challenge all of them to a standoff. And it was equally as satisfying sneaking around the map, silently eliminating everybody before chopping off the leader's head. I mean, come on, Jin is an ancient Japanese Batman, except he kills people. But he has a katana, I mean, what's not to like? The combat is skillfully crafted to never feel dull or boring, as Sucker Punch found a way to make it always feel fresh. So this game is an open world, obviously. And if you're new to video games or need a refresher, open world games need big maps. It's kinda in the name. So let's talk about this open world, the island of Tsushima. Gosh dang, is it something to behold. While at first I was a bit taken back by it not looking completely photoreal at times, especially after just playing a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, but Ghost of Tsushima's map design is beautiful. It doesn't try to be the best looking map possible. It doesn't try to be photorealistic. It doesn't try to have the biggest map possible. What it succeeds at doing is having such a gorgeous map that it lets you forget you're sitting in your pajamas on your couch because you can't go outside, and makes you feel like you're part of the beautiful and diverse landscape that is Tsushima. From rainy, gloomy forests, gleaming grasslands, beautiful cliffsides, and amazing set pieces for dueling, it all makes you forget that you're playing a video game or stuck at home, and makes you feel like you're watching a movie. There was always a unique and breathtaking new area to explore. If a game's map does such a good job of whisking the player off their feet and taking them away to such a beautiful place, especially in the midst of COVID, I mean, how can you complain? Now, besides the main story, side quests are also a vital part of what makes a good open world game. They have to be interesting, engaging, with fun characters and good pacing. This delicate balancing act is something that Ghost of Tsushima nails. The Tales of Tsushima side quests were just as engaging as many parts of the main story missions. I wanted to continue every side quest with the new and interesting stranger I just ran into. There are even a handful of random moments in the game world where I would just stumble upon a fight or someone crying out and unknowingly get thrust into a side mission to help rescue someone or fight off invading Mongols. These are the things that helped me get immersed into the game. They also helped me build the identity of Jin and made me feel like I was not only part of the character, but actually having an effect on the world around me. So besides this game getting the meat and veggies right, there's always a little room for dessert. And in Ghost of Tsushima, that dessert comes in the form of photo mode. Before I get there, there are a lot of things that add some spice and make this game just a little better than it has to be. From an almost flawless navigation system that takes everything off your screen so you can just enjoy the open world following the wind around, to a beautiful and well-designed menu system and black and white Kurosawa mode, the game has plenty of fun treats sprinkled in. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that the developers added Legends, a free multiplayer add-on, which is basically a whole other game that has absolutely no right being as good as it is. They didn't have to do that, yet they did. This is the game that keeps on giving. So, getting back on track, photo mode. At first, I thought this feature would largely go unused for me, but then I started experimenting more and more with what I could do and the beautiful screenshots I could take, and before I knew it, 2 hours had gone by. Everywhere I looked, there was a cinematic painting waiting to be discovered that had been painstakingly pieced together by environment artists, all for my enjoyment. From then on, I was looking for any opportunity to create an epic screensaver-worthy screenshot. So you've stuck around this far. Obviously, there's more than a little biased in my argument because this game is very near and dear to my heart. Early on as a gamer, open world games are what made me excited to pick up a controller. Just Cause 2 was the reason I bought my first console. The freedom of choice and exploration felt limitless. Over time, that excitement faded, with more and more empty open worlds filled with pointless quests and boring story missions. I moved to playing multiplayer video games. For a while, I never even touched open world games. But when Ghost of Tsushima came out, I was curious. The world looked beautiful and diverse, and the idea of running around ancient Japan with a samurai sword, I mean, come on. After the first few minutes, I was hooked. It was like being a kid again and wanting to explore every inch of the map, which I did, and I can honestly say that I have never enjoyed exploring an open world game this much. This game often succeeds where other games fail just by being the best at what it is, an open world game. Is it monotonous and boring? No. Is the fast travel costly and clunky? No. Are mechanics so realistic that they cost the player too much for a simple mistake? No. This is something that Ghost of Tsushima understands better than most games out there. They understand that at the end of the day, they are a video game. They're not trying to be overly realistic or anything that they're not. They are aiming to give the player the best and most enjoyable experience possible, and they hit their mark. I genuinely looked forward to spending hours immersed in the world of Tsushima, exploring the island, finding foxes, fighting enemies, and just riding my horse around. So my argument, if any, is this. For a game that got so much right and is universally adored by fans, is it not worthy of being Game of the Year just because it didn't try anything new? Should ambition outweigh quality? Sucker Punch knew what game they were making, and they succeeded. They made one of the best open world games to date. So despite what the Game Awards say and despite the critic ratings, at the end of the day, we are all entitled to our own opinion. And this is mine. Ghost of Tsushima is my Game of the Year for 2020.